Right. Evening, everyone. I hope everyone's had a wonderful break last Monday and obviously back to work today. Just as to repeat myself, I have got really bad flu, so I will be interrupting myself every so often, and my apologies for that. Okay, let's carry on from where we were previously. Let me just share that. So we are still looking at where management has been and how much of those old management ideas have survived. Certainly, we recognize Henry Fayol's functions. They've changed over time. I think forecasting and planning is now planning, organizing is organizing, commanding, coordinating has become leadership, and then controlling. So we still know these as those standard pulp processes. And it's interesting how this theory is more than 100 years old and how some elements still have remained in place and how we still use these old time theories and in our daily business. And then you can see some of the principles of management, and certainly these have changed. Although you can go look at your own structure, you can go look at your own operations, you'll see that a lot of these are still in place. And a lot of these, yes, even though they've evolved from what the traditional rules were, we would still use similar terminologies. And it's interesting, another theory that is significantly old, more than 100 years old, and yet still part of our daily routines, part of our daily vocabulary. And it's an indication of how forward thinking these theorists were. And yes, I mean, the one change you'll see from these 14 principles is the fact that these are very restrictive. They don't allow for significant innovation. They'll talk about higher structures with multiple reporting levels. And these have evolved over time simply because the environment's evolved. It's far more competitive. And also, we deal with knowledge workers now, people who have significant capabilities that live in their heads, and the ability to access those capabilities depends on changing the rules around what traditionally would have guided organizations. And certainly, we started seeing change in these. And you can have a look at these yourself. You'll see a lot of these changed from the 1990s. Can I just see, as an interesting aside, who here had a job who was working already in the 1990s? Who here was working in the 1990s? Obviously, I was. Anyone here? Balenhle? Okay.
No, I'm
Who
joking.
started? Francois? Okay. Are you just making me feel good? Because I started working in the 80s. So I need to just admit that as Francois, one person at least that will admit that they might be slightly older than, I don't know, 40. I don't know. I'm not going to count that far back. But certainly we see how these principles started changing in the 1990s. I'm just going to mute my face there for a second. And then further evolutions that have taken place. And I think it's the classifications of authority, those traditional definitions of legitimate authority aligned 100% with your level in the organization, and the general rule of thumb: the higher you are in the organization, the more authority you have. And then traditional views on authority, the idea that managers are here to do the thinking and that workers are here to do the doing. And almost the attitude of park your brains at the door, because here you are expected to work, you're not expected to think. And the exact opposite of where we are in the world now, with significant empowerment and devolution of authority, simply because we have these wonderful knowledge workers who are able to contribute significantly. And the worst thing you can do to them is to limit those opportunities for creativity, is to limit their opportunities to contribute. And unfortunately, and it's well worth saying, that some of you might still be working for these really traditional organizations where workers are expected to work and managers are expected to think. And I don't want to pick on a particular industry, but sometimes think in government we still see evidence of these traditional authority guidelines. Any comments on that? Who works for an organization that is very empowering, where authority has been devolved to the lowest levels? Works for an organization that is empowering. Let me ask it differently. Who works for an organization that is disempowering, where everything has to be approved by higher levels, where you're limited in terms of the amount of innovation and creativity that you can display? Oh my gosh, this is clearly not the night for it. Who didn't understand the questions? Now, in case you missed it, that was sarcasm. Okay. Guys, and then the charismatic authority and I know, Nadine, you and I work for the same institution, so both of us won't comment. Tech companies have to give a lot of powers to their employees simply because of the nature of the individuals that you appoint. I mean, you appoint these highly intelligent, highly competent workers, and the worst thing that you can do to them is try and limit those freedoms that you want in terms of being innovative. And certainly, I always, for me, I always wish people could work just once in their lives for a tech company to see the kind of expectations and freedoms that you have. And then charismatic leadership and authority. I still think charismatic leadership has a role to play in organizations. I think charismatic leaders have that ability to create a vision and share a vision that people buy into. I think the idea of charismatic leadership is still one of those that deserves a lot more attention in terms of research. And we also know, and we'll see when we get to charismatic leadership to discuss it in detail, is that you get the negative side of charismatic leadership as well. So, in terms of the charismatic authority, you can see the kind of terminologies that go hand in hand with that. Certainly, the idea of those personal qualities, accomplishments, and because of those intangibles, that almost energy field that these individuals have around them, they're able to get significant loyalty and obedience from followers. Regrettably, we sometimes see this in government and in politics, where charismatic leaders essentially have this significant ability, which sometimes is a disadvantage to their followers. To also just say is that this is where there was the realization that we would have to split leadership and followership, and that when we started seeing these charismatic notions that propel people to higher levels, we started talking about leaders versus managers, and that need to split became evident with the rise of the concept around of charismatic leadership. The next one is interesting. It is Thomas Carlyle's great man theory. Now, the essence of great man theory is that in companies, we have these great men or heroes, these individuals that would be the ones we could rely on when there are times of crises, these individuals that will take the lead when it comes to launching new products, etc. Is it unfair to use the term the great man theory? Can that be considered sexist nowadays? The idea of the great man theory, is it sexist? Give me examples of great men in business, of great men in business. People who, because of their presence, created significant companies, had a global impact because of their presence. Give me examples of those individuals. Come on, somebody must type. Hopefully, you are typing so that I don't need to talk. Steve Jobs, 100%. And we can see how those two individuals and Warren Buffett are aligned with certain successful companies. I mean, Steve Jobs is Apple, even though Steve Jobs doesn't exist anymore and hasn't been around for 10 plus, 15 plus years. Warren Buffett, another example of a business leader. Other great men, guys. And I don't know if you're talking about the same Chris Jenner that I'm thinking about, Maloko. I'm too scared to search. Who is Chris Jenner? Please share that with me. Because when I think of Chris Jenner, I'm Jeff Bezos, absolutely. Who is Chris Jenner? Is that not the Kardashian lots for? I'm too scared to look. Jeff Bezos, absolutely, 100% aligned with I'm going to search Chris Jenner the way you've spelt it here, because just now it is something dodgy. Chris Jenner. Who the hell is that? Is it this person? Oh, genigtig, this is the mom. Yeah. Bruce Jenner. I don't just can I just say thank you, Tam. I don't follow the Kardashians. Adrian Gore in South Africa, in particular, with what was done in in Discovery. What has Chris Jenner brought to the world, guys? It's an interesting one. Is she the driving force behind the Kardashians? That's not shots fired. I don't know about the Kardashians. I thought Chris was the dad, and that was Bruce. Hey, Gavin. She's the momager. Oh my gosh. Okay. So so here's the example of a great person theory. Has had as much impact as Steve Jobs. And sorry, I'm trying to not be sarcastic because this one's going to come back and bite me. Other great leaders that are aligned. I wish I can agree with you, whoever put this person down, Chris, but I'm not going to. Who put this person down? Moloko. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry that I don't know about the Jenners. Yeah, no, Gavin, you should be lodging a complaint. Okay. Other great leaders. Other great leaders. Is that her actual face, that, guys? Wow, she's 70 years old. My goodness me, there's not a wrinkle there. Would love to know her beauty routine. I need to search that afterwards so I can follow. I'm being sarcastic now. I'm going to stop immediately. Botox does wonders. I think that might be some Botox in there, guys. I went the other day for some Botox and they said there wasn't enough Botox in Pietermaritzburg to fill my craters. So I just thought, oh, genigtig, I'll have to start saving. So I'm going to Durban next to see if they have more Botox. Who here uses Botox, wants to admit to using Botox? Who here uses Botox? No one. Oh my gosh. So we definitely far behind the rest of the world, clearly. Oh yeah, no. I've seen the turkey stuff, the turkey teeth and the turkey new hair. Yeah, near donkey. I'm very happy to look as I do. I'm very happy to look as I do. The problem is, guys, and other than Chris Jenner, what was quite interesting, other great female leaders. They are there. They are definitely there. But please remember, this is the 1840s. But we still have this tendency to, when we think of great business leaders, to default to men. great women leaders, great female leaders that have had the same impact as some of the gents mentioned? Can we put Oprah Winfrey in there? Michelle Obama, without a single shadow of a doubt. Oprah, Taylor Swift, I mean, significant leaders, absolutely significant leaders. I think Oprah definitely belongs there. I think she's set standards for other people to emulate, in particular with her Harpo Industries, the company that she ran. And Bill Gates is part of that. I think we certainly see Bill Gates would have been part of this great man theory. I think the reality is that this is making a return, the idea of the great men, because during times of crises, Greta Thunberg, you see, I put Greta Thunberg into that. I think she is astonishing. I think what she's achieved and the awareness that she's raised is very impressive. And you think of it, if we just took those surnames, just by the surnames we would know who we're talking about. I mean, Thunberg is an impressive surname because of the name that goes before that, the Greta part of it. Guys, I think the reality, though, is we see a significant return to this great man theory. And it's often during times of crises that we turn to the so called, and again, it's inverted commas here, great men, because we see how Russia is very much run by a great man. We see how North Korea is run by a great man. We see how America is run by the so-called great man. And we see these in times of crises. So the next one is an interesting one, and it is the managerial leader competing values framework. I thought we haven't done this yet. I hope that we haven't done this yet, that I didn't mess this up. Did we do this last time, guys? I did check the recording.
Yes, we did.
Oh my gosh, I must have mischecked the recording then. I'm so sorry, guys. Have we done this part? I'm so sorry. I'm going to start there.
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, just remember to report. I have flu, so I have an excuse to be useless. So, in terms of what makes a good manager, and you would have seen this, that's the argument that managers have these particular roles to perform. Now, those roles broadly summarize into three broad categories: the so called interpersonal roles, the get along with people roles, and we'll chat about those individually, the information role in terms of tracking and sharing information, and then the decisional role, taking decisions. And if you look at your job, I'm prepared to bet that you're involved in each of those roles to some extent every day. Figurehead, I think this is the person that represents the organization, and steps up when the public, for example, needs to be addressed from a company perspective. Everyone on a daily basis here, I would imagine, would have some leadership role, and then liaison. And we see, for example, our municipality is again, our workers at the municipality again on strike. And I sometimes think it's the liaison that's missing, that link between the company and the trade unions. And then information role, tracking the environment, sharing information that you discern from what you're tracking, and then acting as a spokesperson again in terms of sharing that information, also sharing it with the public, and then the decisional role. Can I see which of your companies expect you to think like an entrepreneur? Expect you to come up with new product ideas, with new business ideas, with changes in terms of how you manufacture, you deliver, how you actually do business. Anyone in that position where you expected to come up with new business ideas, new products, even? Very nice, Jay. Yeah, no, I think you work for a very progressive company. It's interesting because I would expect that a lot of people, based on where we are in the world in 2026, should be. Yeah. You see, it's interesting how in tech firms it is an expectation because it becomes part of your KPIs. But I think for me, it is there has to be this notion of wanting to constantly advance, and the yeah, no, it is part of that. That's very nice, Mbalenhle. Part of the KPIs expect to bring in new business. And then disturbance handler, who's very good at dealing with conflict between employees. Is very good. Very nice. Yeah, part of who you are, Pico. That's very cool. Okay. I think we need a lot more creativity in modern organizations. And then resource allocator in terms of budgets, and then negotiate as well. This is and please be aware of this slide, guys. I love asking questions on this because for me this is an under researched element within the context of what managers and leaders do. And it talks about the idea of listening and the significance of listening. And for me, the my favorite part of the slide is that it allows you to, it refers to the extraordinarization of the mundane. So the mundane would be the listening. But I think the reality is that employees want those moments where they believe what they are saying is important. They want those moments where a leader's attention is paid solely to them. Now, it is part, obviously, of emotional intelligence, etc. But I think we underestimate the value of listening. I think in a world where everyone is so significantly busy, you often will go through a day and hear and not have that kind of moment where you create that extraordinarization of what generally is a mundane activity. And it really is the significance that listening plays in becoming a good leader, but also in creating a sense that you have this kind of partnership with employees. I think there's so many bad listeners, and I will admit, guys, I am an awful listener, and since teaching this theory, I've tried so hard for my attention to focus on somebody who talks to me. I'm an awful listener, but I think the reality is when everyone is so psychotically busy, listening just becomes a nod. It doesn't become a moment of leadership. Any comments about making listening a moment of leadership? That moment where somebody is so important that they take energy from a person listening to them. Who here is a very good listener and believe that they can make that mundane activity something extraordinary? Ask the question differently. Who is so busy in a day that you tend to run into people and tend to hear and actually not take the opportunity to take that moment with an employee as something important, as something motivating, as something energy giving? Is it too much to expect from Cameron? I'm incredibly guilty of that. I think sometimes my brain is running at 100 and 50 Ks an hour because I'm always running. I've always got something to do. And I think honesty is a good place to start. Who is very good and has the potential of making that situation, that extraordinarization moment? But it is about interest. I think it is about interest. I think people want to feel important. I once attended a conference, and one of the things that came out from the conference leader is that every single person in the world has this invisible sign that hangs around their head, and that invisible sign reads, "I want to feel important." And I think this is that kind of moment. Who wants to admit to being good at listening and who potentially will do this on a daily basis? Take listening as a leader activity, as a leadership activity. It's a tough one. I think me, it would be quite interesting in this week. And I know whenever we plant these little seeds, that is going to hopefully live in your brain tomorrow and even still be in your brain on Wednesday. See if you can do this and see the impact of that. Because I'd love to hear from you on Monday next week whether it actually has made a difference in terms of your leadership style, that kind of moment where you take time, where you take a breath, and you allow people to feel important as per the invisible sign. Guys, other elements that I think we can place into what makes a leader and part of our everyday routines. The first one is the ability to speak to forms of knowledge. And for me, what we do in this class is a minuscule part of the knowledge that you should be acquiring. On a daily basis, read the newspapers, check the news items. For me, it's important in terms of what I do to talk to the news, to understand what's happening in the news. And also, for my face-to-face lectures, I mean, in some instances, I'm three times the age of my students, and in a lot of instances, sorry, I'm three times the age of my students, and to try and find things that fit into their areas of interest is very difficult, and it can only happen when I'm busy watching and learning and checking. Guys, and then the second one is to deal with human interaction and to follow it. And so concepts around listening and decency and honesty and integrity come to mind. And then to constantly question and query what we are doing, what we should be doing, what we should stop doing, and then also appropriate emotions. And can I just say, a lot of this is summarized into the concept around emotional intelligence. And to deploy metaphors, the ability to share interesting stories, not just deal with the facts, to share the bigger picture. So, for me, a wonderful metaphor, and I'm busy writing an article at the moment, is the value of storytelling and the value of sharing stories and creating pictures that people can understand. And then also the fact that we don't forget history and that history has to be part of our future. And sometimes reminding people around history and resilience. Okay, that's that done. Any questions, any comments? I'm going to stop the recording so that I can split this